Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you to CBRE's presentation and panel discussion on the hotspots for retailers in 2012. This is based on the third edition of our How Active Are Retailers in Europe report. And following the success of recent reports, we've updated this and surveyed 180 leading retailers across Europe and across a range of sectors. And we've asked them about their expansion plans for next year. The survey was undertaken in the summer of this year, principally in August and September. And I very much look forward to sharing the findings of the research with you this morning. But first of all, I'd like to introduce you to my distinguished panel. So on the far chair there, we have Rodrigo de Dios, who is the expansion director for the footwear retailer Camper. In the middle, we have Jörg Brenner, who's head of corporate analysis at Media Saturn. He advised me yesterday they trade from 900 locations in 17 countries, having an extraordinary 2.8 million square meters of retail space. And then we have Michael Ebbe, who's the commercial director for Inter IKEA Centre Group. He looks after concept development, investment management, and leasing. So, before we kick off, a little bit of context. It's impossible to ignore the wider economic environment currently, particularly around the Eurozone crisis. Greece, as we know, has seen a bailout, and there's a threat of default in Italy, which is likely to lead to even tougher austerity measures. And where next? In reality, of course, all of Europe has been affected by the Eurozone crisis, and the constant media coverage has had an impact on what consumers are doing. Here we can see the European Consumer Confidence Index, and this is an update of the graph which I showed last year. Last year we showed the sharp decline in confidence following the demise of Lehman Brothers, but equally how confidence had returned again equally sharply after that. In fact, we've had an 18-month period when consumer confidence has been more or less at the long-term average, which arguably is quite a good place to be, given that consumers have been dealing with austerity measures in most countries. However, as you can see from the graph, confidence levels have decreased significantly since June, from when the Eurozone crisis has kicked in. And it's against this background that we undertook the research amongst consumers this year. So what are we going to look at? 4 areas: how and where retailers are looking to expand next year, a little bit about operating models, preferences for franchising and own store expansion, who is expanding in terms of the types of retailers, and finally looking at what retailers' intentions are with regard to the online world. So, let's kick off. What are retailers' expansion plans for next year? Has the economic climate stopped retailers wanting to expand their store networks? Well, our research suggests that far from it. Last year, we reported that retailer confidence had returned, and this year we can report that this level of confidence has been sustained, and retailers are looking to open up a similar number of stores in 2012 as they were planning to do in 2011. So next year, 71% of the survey sample were looking to open up 5 or more stores, similar to last year, but significantly ahead of the previous year when it was only 48%. And large-scale expansion is very much on the agenda still. Next year, 1 in 5 retailers are looking to open up 40 or more stores in the EMEA region, slightly ahead of last year and significantly ahead of the year before that. So a number of retailers remain confident to press ahead with their expansion plans and view this as a time of opportunity. Clearly, at the same time, not all retailers are so ambitious. Many remain risk-averse. And next year, a quarter of retailers are only planning to open up between 1 and 5 stores, and that's a little bit higher than the previous year. So we're seeing a polarization between those retailers which are more cautious and a slight increase in those that are looking at larger scale expansion plans. So I'd now like to just turn over to the panel and direct a question to them, initially to Rodrigo and to Jörg. Clearly, some retailers see this as a time to expand, but others are pulling back. Just wanted to get your view of this. Is it a time to grow or to consolidate? And also a question for Michael in terms of what are the opportunities for developers in this market. So perhaps initially can I take your view on that?
Can you hear me? Yeah, good. Well, the retailer's law to open stores to increase market share is still alive, right? Also in times of multi-channel developments and a lot of pure player developments, I have to say that you have to open stores. You have to get solid on your stationary business, and you have to put also new stores within also difficult weather conditions within Europe at these times. But you have to expand. You have to develop stores, right?
Sure. Okay. Rodrigo, what's your view?
Well, in my case, I agree with Jörg. We need to expand, and this time is the opportunity to consolidate the brand, especially in these markets where you are really mature in Western Europe. But at the same time, try to looking for new markets. Focus on the new markets around Europe, where you are not, and you could get a lot of new customers. And this is mainly what is our focus.
Okay. And Michael, are there opportunities for developers in the current market?
Yes, definitely. I mean, in these times, maybe some of the most optimistic projects fall out. And that gives a lot of opportunities for more healthy projects to come alive. Maybe it goes a little bit slower now, but it's still quite okay.
Okay, so a relatively positive picture then in terms of store expansion and opportunities for developers in spite of the economic climate. Okay, so let's move on and see where retailers are looking to expand next year. The survey respondents told us they were looking at 40 different markets across the EMEA region. The top 5 were Italy, Germany, Russia, Spain and France in that order. And you can see from the map there that in the red are those countries which are being targeted by 30% or more of retailers in the survey. So Italy comes out top, which may be a little bit of a surprise given the current situation. It was 8th position last year, its 1st position this year, in spite of the Eurozone crisis and relatively low consumer expenditure growth. But consumption levels are high in Italy, particularly amongst the fashion sector. And there is a sense that retailers have been focusing on other larger markets, Germany, UK, France, Spain, in recent years. Many have exhausted opportunities there recently and are now looking at where else they can expand. And Italy fits the bill in many ways, primarily because it's underrepresented in terms of international retailers, but also there's a solid pipeline of new space coming on stream, providing the opportunities for retailers to expand there. Germany, in 2nd place, it was 1st place last year, and I know Carsten, who heads up CBRE's German office, was somewhat surprised they weren't still in 1st place this year. However, clearly the economy is relatively strong there, consumer spending is growing, and the number of large cities in Germany is also and remains an attraction for retailers targeting the country. Russia in 3rd place, 6th position last year, so that's moved up the rankings. And if you only consider the international retailers, Russia actually comes top of the rankings. The retail sector is in good health, and domestic retailers are also expanding there. Retail sales grew by over 5% in the first half of the year. Elsewhere in the region, Poland and the Czech Republic remain in the top 10. Poland, however, has fallen back from 2nd position last year to 10th this year, partly due to the lack of quality stock in the major cities where retailers want to expand, and also because of the failure of a number of franchisee operations. However, a quarter of the retailers in the survey continue to look at Poland. And finally, just to mention the Middle East, which is a market which is attracting more retailers in 2012 than it was last year, particularly Saudi Arabia, Kuwait and Qatar. Over 15% of the survey sample were looking at all 3 of those markets. Obviously stronger economies than most of those in Western Europe, and a lack of international brands in those markets. So that's a brief summary of where retailers have told us they are looking at for next year. So once again, I would like to turn back to the panel and get their views. And questions for Rodrigo and Jörg in terms of which markets they believe provide the best opportunities for them and why. And for Michael, with the current focus on Prime, for Michael, where are the hotspots for developers in terms of countries? Do they match up with those for retailers? So who would like to start? Jörg.
So Neville, you mean apart from Greece, right?
Apart from Greece.
Okay.
I suspect that's probably going to come pretty much bottom of the list.
Okay. We see for, let's say, retailing, and especially consumer retailing, consumer electronics retailing, most chances in Russia and Turkey. These two countries, in our view, have a strong demand. They have a strong growth. We had partly two-digit growth in our consumer spending for our assortment. This is very positive for growth of a retailer, and you cannot find so much in Western Europe at the moment. This, I would say, Turkey and Russia give good opportunities for retailers. If you see a number of huge cities, huge population, and concentration on cities, this is very important for retailers, I would say.
Okay. And Rodrigo, what's your view?
Well, my feeling is that the position is the hot spots must be the top 5 cities. Keep pushing on that cities because...
Which cities would you be referring to?
London, Paris, Rome, Milan, and also Berlin in our case, because in Spain we are very well positioned since a long time. And then also focus in Scandinavia because due to the lack of stores from our company. And then Russia and Turkey because it's markets that they are nowadays growing really fast. Especially in our case in Turkey we are quite strong and we are growing very, very well. So, and also want to add that you mentioned before Greece, but I want to say that Greece today has some opportunities. At the right price, they are still really fashionable. They are quite similar to Italians in terms of fashion. And if they find the good spot and at the right price, there is opportunities.
Okay, interesting. And Michael, opportunities?
Yeah, the survey is very encouraging for us because this is really our markets. I think Italy will be very important for us in the future, and we are very active in Spain, France, and our sister company is in Russia, as you know. So it looks promising in that perspective.
Okay, so more or less in line with what the retailers have been telling us on the survey.
Yeah, and the bottom line is that there must be some kind of a demand from the consumers. So in that respect, we have the same objectives.
Okay, fantastic. So Russia and Turkey seem to be top of the list there, but clearly Greece on the market there. So retailers clearly looking at a very wide range of markets overall. I just want to turn attention briefly to operating models that retailers prefer. Franchising continues to be tested in the current market, primarily due to the limited access to capital. And it's very difficult for them to implement expansion plans on this basis. Retailers have been forced to reconsider their strategy on this basis, and many have increased their preference for own store expansion. In some cases, retailers have purchased failing franchisees, not only to control the brand, but to ensure that they can expand. However, it's not just the franchisees that are finding it difficult to access capital. That's true of many retailers as well. So franchising does remain popular amongst some because it's in fact the only way that they can expand. And if you look at the graph here, you can see that franchising does play a part in every sector. But if you look at the right-hand bar there, you can see that only 10% of retailers use franchising only, and just less than half prefer own store, and just less than half a mixture of the two. The key observation from this year's survey regarding operating model, however, was the difference between the regions, between the emerging markets and the Western Europe. So last year, it was very clear that Western Europe much preferred operating their own stores. But in Central and Eastern Europe, there was much more of a mix between own stores and those preferring franchising. You can see on the second bar, 52% against 48%. And as I've just noted, both regions have seen an increase in a preference for own store expansion. However, this is much more marked in the case of Central and Eastern Europe. And now 2/3 of retailers are looking at own store expansion in the emerging markets of Central and Eastern Europe, partly due to the lack of access to capital, but at the same time, we suspect that more retailers are more comfortable to move into the emerging markets. I just wanted to talk briefly to Rodrigo about that and ask what his experience was for Camper in relation to franchising and own store expansion in different parts of Europe.
In case of Western Europe, today 95% of our stores are corporate stores and just maybe 5% franchisees. But these special cases where it used to be a wholesale customer really strong, and then we give to them the chance to go with us. But my feeling is that Western Europe, in long term, make not really sense franchise. And in Eastern Europe, it's a different situation. There is some countries that, on the past, everyone was working by franchise, and you see some brands, and we are thinking also to go by ourselves in some of these countries because we feel more safety than used to be in the past. So it's time to go by ourselves.
And do you see this as just a response to the market, or do you see it as a structural change?
Well, the structure of the countries changed a lot. We have been visiting more of these countries also.
So the future of franchising, is it going to continue to be less popular going forward, do you think?
I think it's franchise with retail. It's going to be, in long term, it's going to be difficult to follow. It's going to be own stores, mainly.
Okay, so we expect to see a long-term decline, arguably, from Rodrigo in the amount of retailers that are using the franchising model. Okay. Now, I just want to talk very briefly about different sectors, the types of retailers that are expanding. And here, we measure the average number of stores that retailers are intending to acquire in the following year. And this slide, I just want to look at the two main movers from last year compared to this year. Value and denim retailers. Last year, they were looking to open up 30 stores on average. This year, it's moved up to 36. They are the most expansive sector, perhaps not unexpectedly. Consumers obviously trading down in the current climate, and many retailers in this sector are looking to grow their market share and take advantage of this situation. And interestingly, retailers in this sector, 40% of them are looking to open more than 40 stores next year. So large-scale expansion very much on the agenda for value and denim retailers. On the other hand, consumer electronics retailers are looking to open up half the number of stores as they did last year, just 9 for 2012. Clearly, trading conditions are tough in this sector, with consumers reining back their spending on large ticket items. When they do buy them, increasingly it's online. And also advances in technology. Many of us, I guess, now have smartphones which combine telephones, games, music, MP4 players, etc. So whereas previously consumers may have bought 2 or 3 items, they might now only be buying the one item, the smartphone. There's some interesting facts that have arisen from the survey regarding what's happening in the fashion sector as well. I'm going to highlight just a couple of those. Luxury and business fashion sector has always been resilient in difficult economic times, and that continues to be the case again here. If you look at the yellow line, it shows the proportion of retailers in the luxury and business fashion sector targeting those markets. And there's a few anomalies there. Italy and France head the rankings, not unexpectedly, as many retailers in this sector originate from those markets. The Middle East also, we can see Qatar and Kuwait are also a major target for the luxury retailers. There's more modern retail space being built there. Almost a third of the retailers in this sector are targeting these countries. But what has changed since last year is Central and Eastern Europe. There was very little demand amongst the luxury retailers last year for that region. This year it has increased, and we can see Russia is in 3rd place there, with over a third of retailers in this sector targeting Russia. The Czech Republic and Bulgaria are also major targets, coming in 8th position equal, interestingly, and this is above the UK. So clearly there's an increased demand for luxury and business fashion goods in the emerging markets. Potentially interesting new trend there. Mid-range fashion retailers. One or two interesting aspects about this as well. There are differences by country. This is the yellow line here. So if you look at the far left of the graph, you can see Italy is there. But some of those big markets, Italy, Spain and France, there's less demand amongst the mid-range fashion retailers than there is overall. And this is primarily because of the intense competition in these markets. However, you'll also see that Germany and Russia score well. Germany, traditionally a value-orientated market. Now consumers are embracing higher-priced brands, so there's great opportunities for mid-range fashion retailers in Germany. Likewise, in Russia, over a third of retailers in this sector targeting that market as well. So, a couple of questions for our panelists here. I wanted to direct one to Michael, which was to whether or not you see a change in the type of retailers seeking space in your centres, and also to ask Jörg what his reaction was to the halving of expansion plans by consumer electronics retailers in our survey. So, Michael, perhaps you want to answer?
I cannot say so much about the luxury sector because we are not really there. And we foresee a slightly higher interest from the value retailers. But on the other hand, we have always been a location that has been attractive to these kind of concepts. So it's a little bit business as usual. And I can also confirm that denim and that part of young fashion is very strong. But we also see a hard competition in that sector, so it's a little bit interesting.
Okay, so still a wide range of different types of retailers targeting. Okay. And Jörg, what was your reaction to the figures on the consumer electronics?
Well, the halving looks quite dramatic, I have to say. But indeed, if you analyze markets like the UK, and you see that a very big player moved out the market or will move out the market, and you see another one who gets sold for £2. So this is also market consolidation in my eyes in these times. And this leads retailers also in our range of products to be cautiously optimistic, to take care to rework their concepts and strategies, and to invest carefully, and to be very aware of a midterm perspective, I would say.
Okay, fantastic. Now we're finishing up with the formal part of the presentation. We're just going to have a quick look at e-commerce, but just before we do, we will have time for some questions at the end, I hope. So do please give some consideration to that. We have a very distinguished panel of guests here, so do feel free to ask them questions. So, finishing up with online retailing. Last year, we identified this as a hot topic, and arguably this year, it's an even hotter topic. And in fact, CBRE has undertaken a detailed piece of research around Europe's online consumer earlier this year to better understand consumer attitudes to online retailing. However, today, I just want to reflect on what retailers have been telling us in our How Active survey, what their intentions are. Last year, we reported that multi-channel retailing was becoming more important, and half the retailers in the survey suggested they wanted to expand their online platform. This year, online retailing is still very much high on their agenda, with 71% saying they plan to significantly increase their transactional capability next year. The emphasis is very much this year on increasing their product range, which is the middle of the three bars there. But retailers are also continuing to look at new markets as well. So clearly, online retailing is growing fast, and it will be the fastest growing part of retailers' businesses for many years to come. However, retailers are also using their online platforms to test markets before opening physical stores in new countries. And arguably, it's easier than ever to do that. Because they can test their products and their brands in new markets, consumers know about their products before they enter with a physical store. So, a huge growth potential, arguably, and I'd like to throw this back to our panelists for Rodrigo and Jörg to ask, what are the key challenges for developing a multi-channel business, and how you think that might affect the demand for retail real estate in your area. And to Michael, to ask about, are developers and owners of shopping centres, are they just reacting to what's happening in the consumer market and with what retailers are doing, or is there an opportunity for owners to be proactive in terms of hanging on or encouraging tenants to stay in their shopping centres? So, Rodrigo, what's your view? What's the Campi view on multi-channel retailing?
Well, in the case online, it's growing very fast. If you compare with full-price stores on shopping centers or high street. But it's very important to take care of the quality of the network distribution online, because everyone could be selling your products, and you need to take care of the price that they are selling your products and how they are selling your products. So it's going to be important in the next years to take care of this quality and focus on the quality of the distribution. Otherwise, you will lose brand, image, and so on. So it's very important to keep this quality on distribution, also online.
Sure. Okay. And in terms of how it's affecting your business, in terms of your expansion plans and demand for retail space, is it having any impact on that at all?
At the moment, no. But maybe someday we'll have it. But also I want to mention that it will appear new formulas on business that will share stores with online, because on the stores normally you don't get all the range of products, and maybe there is a chance to work with online inside the stores and give the possibility to customers to give more products, especially when you go to fashion, that it's not really big stores as a MediaMarkt, that you have the full range.
Okay. Thank you. What's your view on the online retailing world?
Well, I think there is no question about it that every retailer must be online. And in the ideal case would be to build up a multi-channel business and to find out what is the advantages of the brand, of the retailer for the future. There could be that you have to rework your concept completely and your strategy completely. It could be that retailers tend to overwork their sales spaces for the future, because some of them have realized that the percentage of online sales is quite high. It means 40%, 50% of their turnovers. And so they are not, they would need maybe more high quality spaces, but maybe smaller spaces. And I know that a lot of retailers are already waiting for concepts from the development industry that they could integrate their new concepts or their multi-channel concepts within the new shopping centers, and also existing shopping centers who've been refurbished or remodeled. So there should be a real shift in my eyes. We cannot just think about multi-channel will be there, yes, but we also have to integrate it in the daily business, because the customer, and this is our case, the customer is really expecting that we offer him in a modern technology, in a modern way, this kind of products he likes to have, and he doesn't expect any retailer to deliver him what he has got the last 10 or 15 years. So customers are expecting a lot more. Customers are demanding. They want to have meeting places in the shopping centers. They want to have entertainment. They want to have possibilities to sit somewhere. They want to have possibilities to connect themselves via the iPhones or iPads. So they are a lot more demanding in terms of modern technology. And it's not only retailing, which is important for the shopping centers, but the all surrounding also.
Okay, fantastic.
Well, from our perspective, I think it goes slower than expected. we thought that we should see new shop formats much earlier, but for sure it will come. It will come. We rely on the retailers, so it's difficult to say when. We get proposals now and then from new concepts that want to combine online and regular shop activities in the centers, but nothing big yet.
So it's very much the case that the owners appear to be being reactive to what's going on in terms of consumer demand and what retailers are doing, rather than there's an opportunity for owners to be proactive in retaining tenants in their centres. Maybe that just isn't a requirement as yet. I mean, do you see that as an issue going forward?
Yeah, but I mean, in theory, at least, the increase goes faster over internet today than in the regular shop business. So in theory, the demand for floor space should relatively be smaller.
You're hedging your bets there. Okay. Right. Thanks, guys. That concludes the formal part of the presentation. But I know I spoke to them yesterday. They're very happy to take any questions about markets that they're looking at, their views around e-commerce, etc. So do we have any questions at all from the floor? Yeah.
John, I actually have two questions. First one is for Neville. The demand, is it monitored? The demand in your survey,
Yeah.
is it monitored into which extent that has been satisfied over the last year, or if that's actually the same demand which was there the year before? Do you follow from your retailers how much shops they actually open? And my second question is there a specific reason why the Benelux countries with 30 million inhabitants score so low, bad in your survey?
Okay. To answer your first question, no, we don't monitor that, but it's a fair question, and it is something we've considered. It can be quite a struggle to gain retailers' attention when you're undertaking a survey with them, and it's something we would like to get better access to next year to make those comparisons. I'm afraid I can't really offer any view on that in terms of whether retailers have taken up what they said they would. In terms of your region, I don't think it's quite as bad as it may suggest. They're not in the top 10 in most instances, but we have got 40 odd markets that retailers are looking at, which does include the Benelux countries as well. I think my main reaction to that would be that the retailers are increasingly focused on the prime pitches in the bigger cities, and Rodrigo was talking about just the top 5 cities are of most interest to him. And I guess Netherlands and Belgium don't quite fit the rules on that for many retailers. Clearly, there are some big centres there. So it may be why some retailers might be bypassing the Benelux countries in favour of bigger cities in Germany, UK, France, and increasingly perhaps in Russia and Turkey. Okay. Do we have any other questions from the floor at all? Okay. In that case, we shall wrap up, and I'd just like to throw up this slide, which very briefly gives our conclusions of the day. So we saw earlier retail confidence has been sustained in spite of the economic situation, although clearly we must acknowledge that a number of retailers are only looking to open up a relatively small number of stores. However, opportunities exist in a wide range of markets. As I've just mentioned, the focus does tend to be purely on prime pitches and the largest cities. But as Rodrigo also mentioned, Greece is a target as well for them. Multi-channel retailing is the future. I don't think anyone can deny that. And for many retailers, cross-border expansion will provide the best opportunities for growth next year. So with that, I would like to thank the panel, Rodrigo, to Jörg, and to Michael, and thank you for attending. And just before we wrap up, I'd just like to draw your attention to another session. We've talked about Italy quite a lot today. Italy is the country of honour at this year's Mapic. And there is a session being held in the room Agora at 3 o'clock this afternoon. So if that is a market of interest to you, please do feel free to go along. Thank you very much.